What makes a 3D character looks alive? Nice looking texture or clean model? Not really. What truly brings life is motion, and not just skeleton animation. Standard rig only gets you halfway there, but until you add Jigglybones physics and cloth simulation, your character still will look stiff. Asking for it for quite a while, so here we go. In this video, I'm gonna show you the full workflow from how I create character with AI, concepting, 3D generation, assembly in Blender, and rigging. Then we're gonna bring it to Unreal Engine, set the physics bones and cloth simulation. I researched it and tested for a while, so I'm ready to show the fastest and easiest way to do that. Hit that like button, guys, and let's get started. The character of the day will be this lady named Violet. Why not? We do have some stuff to animate here. We do have this sort of bells, and we're gonna add jiggly physics here, and we're also gonna do cloth simulation for the dress. The same approach is scalable for different parts, different type of cloth and stuff. For purpose of tutorial, I have to find a balanced option. Well, now what is always true is that we need to split into the parts. Well, that works on many levels. First of all, it will be easier to control it. The second one, it will be easier to rig and add weights, and in Unreal Engine, when we will do the cloth simulation, is gonna help us a lot. So first thing I'm gonna do is, of course, to go and split some parts. I'm gonna do the whole process with models like Not a Banana or GPT Image 2. That's really not a problem. Do hair separately, head separately, body separately, and also dress separately, because I'm about to do a physics on the clothes. So here you can see the process, how I approach it. You can see the prompts that I use. Again, that's not a big deal. Just ask GPT to extract that. Newest edit models like Nana Banana Pro or GPT Image 2 do that exceptionally. And here's the bunch of parts that I created. Again, it is guided by the logic of how I'm about to animate. Like, it really helps to keep body and dress separated, since for the dress, I'm gonna apply cloth simulation. Of course, the same goes for the hat. If it's separated, it will be easier to add new bones and set weights. Potentially, I can also animate this bow, so be guided by logic of your character. When that's done, it's time to generate 3D models. And for this, I'm gonna use, of course, Tripo P1, which is, in my opinion, as absolutely GOAT. Just look at the wireframe and the results that I got from the generation. I mean, they're pretty much perfect. I just need to adjust, remove some parts, maybe fix a little bit the geometry somewhere, but overall, I'm extremely satisfied with the result. Especially what I really like is how it creates faces. So here you can see the eyelashes are created as a separate geometry, and then we can texture this, look quite nice. Yes, it might require like a little bit of fixes, but to be honest, guys, just look at this. This is absolutely insane. We can do a little bit of touch up manually, and boom, that's done. Now let me give you some tips. Now in Tripo, you can also generate images. There's like all edit models available here as well, and the process is exactly the same. You just don't need to pay for another subscription, especially if you're only into 3D. You can press generate model, and here let me give you some tip. It's very important to set the reasonable amount of poly counts per object. There is no automatic, and I think that's actually great. So for hats, the reasonable amount can be like 3.5 thousand polygons, right? For a bigger part like hats, we can actually go like 5, 7, maybe 8, depends on how many details. For hair, I can go like 5 to 7 as well. Maybe for full body, to not get it that much triangulated, you see, we can actually go for 10, 15,000, but that's fine. The limit here is 20,000, which again makes sense, and it will be always enough if you split into the parts and generate one by one. And also, when you generate the mesh, first what you will notice, it's extremely fast here. Here we go, just 5 seconds. And then we can go to texture, and you can basically do the base texture, press generate, and you can also do the upscale or add PBR. I'm about to use toon shaders, so I don't really need PBR, but again, for realistic characters, definitely try it out. So here we go, and we can also preview in toon shader. Huge time saver, exceptional quality, and of course, guys, if you want to try it out, link and promo code in the description. But of course, guys, you can generate 3D model in any other 3D AI. It's just gonna require a little bit more time for you to process. Now, here the advantage I already already get like quite optimized, nice 3D models. You can do that with Hunyuan. It will require more steps. In Hunyuan, you do that like high poly, then retopology, and then texturing. Again, I have quite a lot of videos on my channel how to do that completely free. The video will be somewhere here. The trade-off is very simple. Either you have more time to fix the models or you have some money to get better results. As a next step, of course, we're gonna bring it all to Blender and start assembling. I do have quite a lot of tutorials how to do that. We're not gonna focus on that, but let's quickly recap. The main thing is to basically combine parts together. I usually create that body to actually have it as a main reference. So I'm gonna just drop all the objects and set them in right position, apply, adjust. I really enjoy using sculpt mode and some simple mesh editing to adjust the shape around, and sometimes it requires some fixes on the mesh. So here you can see like I just remove some polygons. Also for the parts that you generate like hands also can be useful, like you can remove some part that it will be hidden, etc, etc. If you're generating hands, feet, or something that can be mirrored, better do it mirrored, right? That will actually save on texture. If that's like same objects, I usually just delete one side and just do the mirror. Again, that's not only make it same, but also use the same texture map. That's quite a lot of benefits. And of course, depending how you plan your character, you can remove the parts inside. So for example, I'm removing the body here because it will never be visible really, right? I'm gonna cap it. I'm gonna just make sure my legs go inside the dress, and that's it. And what's more importantly, I take care about the parts that I'm gonna animate, right? Which is head, which is dress. So that pretty much make perfect sense. If you're new to this, guys, this is extremely simple. There's just a few tools like sculpting tools, some editing tools that will allow you to combine your 3D models into a perfectly looking character. Not an issue. I do have videos on my channel explaining it, how to do that with free tools. Take a look. There are even lessons for blenders for very beginners. But if you are seriously into it, I have great news for you. I just recently launched my first ever 3D AI course that is focused on giving you 10% of 3D skills such as this and knowledge about best 3D AI tools so you can create professional grade 3D characters and props for your dream game. Links in the description. Okay, so cleanup passes done. We have our character ready. Now it's actually time to start rigging. So I'm gonna export character as a BX, and just a small tip, when you export, if you choose pass mode as copy and choose it to pack, then you will export with textures and it will be easy to transfer. Okay, so we're gonna export it like that and go to Acrylic. Now what's happening in Acrylic is a well-known process. You set markers, set some lines, check out the character, that everything works. Again, it's well covered in my other videos, so we're just doing a quick recap here. We go to set markers on the body, then we go through each hands. You can control amount of fingers, and then we wait as it's processed. So the result is already actually very nice, right? But make sure that you set some offset if you have non-standard proportions on your character. But I do have like quite nice proportion. Wow, look actually very nice. And now let's export it for Unreal Engine skeleton and bring it back to Blender. Yes, to Blender. We are not yet ready to go for Unreal Engine. Now here's the thing, there are two main ways to do animation. The first one is Jigglybones or dynamic bones or physics bones, right? So there are bones that are affected by real physics, by character movement and stuff. And the second one is the cloth simulation. So we do have a loose clothing on the dress that we want to actually be controlled by movement, like when the leg are moving, so it's actually do some waves, which makes sense. There might be some ropes that also can use cloth simulation and stuff. So for cloth simulation, we just need mesh prepared, and then we're gonna add it in Unreal Engine. But for Jigglybones, we need bones. So that's what we're gonna add now. But we don't need a conflict of interest. So since I said I want to do dress simulated, I don't want the bones actually affected. Otherwise, it will be quite disruptive. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna select armature and object and go to the weight paint. Now with Ctrl Shift, we are able to click on bones, and we're gonna see what this bone is affecting. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna remove weights from these areas on these bones, right? So in here in the weight paints, I'm gonna choose the gradient painting, and this is like an amazing tool, especially for the beginners. I'm gonna set weight to 0, and here's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna just start dragging from bottom to top and trying to form this sort of line, right? So the bottom of the dress is sort of not affected. So you can control the strength to form sort of like nice gradients, right? So here's how I do that. Like I just like move from bottom to top. Here we go. Okay, you can check the other bones. Just make sure that we don't have. The pink actually means that the bone is not assigned at all. So yeah, I'm clicking on the bottom and there is nothing changing. Actually, we can also go to pose mode and we can try to move the bones and see like if they are actually moving the dress or not. So that was the first thing. Remember, if you want to add close simulation to some part, make sure that bones do not affect it. Remove the weights from those areas. Now we're gonna go to the second part, and here we're gonna need to add new bones. All right, so how do you add new bones? So the easiest way is to add bones on top of one existing. So they are sort of connected. They must be connected to something. So what I will do, I'm gonna go to heads, and first I'm gonna need to find the heads. In Unreal Engine Skeleton in Blender, for some reason the head bone was super small. So, but that's not a problem. I'm gonna go to Explorer and actually, go through bones, open them, and I'm gonna find this head. Okay, so it's selected, and you can see it's not even showing in Blender, but that's not a problem. We're gonna go to edit mode while skeleton is selected, and we're gonna press E. E button is for extrude. So boom. Okay, so we do have this bone. Then later we can move it, but okay, I'm gonna set the front view and start the process again. Let's first move it a bit, and then let's extrude it to form the line across our hats. Something like this will do. So just with one tool, I made all these three bones. And pretty much this works for many things like some appendices, like tails, hair. The process will be similar. Just make sure that later you can add weights nicely. And also don't forget to give reasonable names, because later you have to find those bones in Unreal Engine. So in my case, it will be 1L, 2L, 3L, just for the simplicity, but you can add better names, especially if you have more than one Jigglybones. And the main bone that I added is main hat. L basically stands for left, because I'm gonna do the same thing exactly for the right. Alright, so bones are added, and I also wanted to position them a little bit nicer so they actually follow the hat. Again, guys, in my 3D course, I explain more details like how to process that, and I also have videos on YouTube about the rigging. It looks complicated, but when you try it out, it's quite clear, right? The bones are pretty much as human bones, and the weights is like a skin, and it actually called skinning here in 3D as well. So now when we added the bones, the time is to add weights, because again, bone alone without a flesh will be bone alone, right? So what we're gonna do, we're gonna select the armature and the object, and then go to weight paint. So we can click with Ctrl Shift on the bones and see what weights are attached. You can see the pink color means that they do not affect it at all. So what we're gonna do, we're gonna use gradients again. You can also use brush based same logic. And here's how I like to do that. And for me, I figure out it's like the fastest way. So what we need to do is sort of like draw the connection line from the joints of our bone, right? And we also wanted to make nice gradients. If it will be very, very hard, then it will look quite clunky. So where the joints is, I try to make it sort of gradient, and more darker, like more red, which is represents a high affection in the middle of the bone. Something like this. Then I'm gonna click on the next bone and pretty much do the same. With gradient brush, especially in the case like this, or when you do tail, hair and stuff, it's quite easy to do it. With gradient brush, it's really easy. Again, if your case is more difficult, you can always switch to brush and fine-tune some areas. Similar again. The red color means that this area of the mesh will follow this bone 100%. The blue color means that this area of the mesh will completely ignore this bone. Zero affection. Okay, so that's done. So how about we give it a try? Let's go to the pose mode and try to move it. And here we can see it's something weird, right? Well, it's definitely not what's expected. So here is the answer. It's quite simple, because initially the whole hat is already weighted and skinned on the head bone, right? Or it might be any other bone. So let's go to the mode and try to find that bone again. So if it's difficult to select it here, we can actually go to this menu, vertex groups. Vertex groups graphs exactly is what each bone affects. Here we're gonna find head. And here's what we see, right? So head 100% control our head. This is not what we want. So we're gonna set weight to 0 and remove it from our jiggly part, right? Exactly with the same brush, like this. Oh, I mean, yeah, I really like this approach. It saves so much time. So now our head bone do not affect it, and let's give it a try. Okay, now the movement looks exactly how I want. There might be a need for some additional cleanup and check that some shoulder bone, for example, do not affect it because it was automatically rigged. So just go through each bone and see that it only affects the desired part of your mesh. Okay, I'm gonna do exactly the same process for the left side. And now when it's done, we're actually ready to bring it to Unreal Engine. So how we're gonna export that? It's pretty simple. We go export FBX. And here's a very important thing. Like we pack textures like this, copy and press this button. In armature, we need to disable add leaf bones. And if you do not have animations, you remove, but especially important to uncheck add leaf bones. Okay, now let's drop it to our Unreal Engine. So I just created a simple third-person template. I'm gonna drag and drop our FBX and import it with default settings. That's totally fine, actually. The second step is to drop our skeleton. Okay, so we can preview our mesh. Looks good, materials work, but we can adjust it. Now let's quickly replace the blueprint character with our character. We're gonna go find ABP Many and press retarget animation. Here from SKM Queen Simple, we're gonna find our character, skeletal mesh, and we're gonna just retarget it. We're gonna choose all animation except ABP Queen and Queen post process. We can add custom prefix and boom, that will basically do the bunch of animations. So now we can go to the BP third person. Okay, here in the skeletal mesh, we're gonna need to choose our rigged violet, and in animation class, we're gonna need to choose Vio ABP Many, and that should be enough to actually run the character in Unreal Engine, right? So we can already go around. Okay, but yeah, again, physics will not appear by itself. Now we're approaching to the main part. So let's go to a physics assets that we have. We have it opened. So here we can see the colliders around each bone, but actually not around each bone, but about most of the bone. So first of all, we need to put it into some order. The colliders are quite big where they are not. We want them to follow the body exact. Why this collider exists? They actually represent the body in simple shape. So this will be used in the physics calculation. So how the physical bones work, and including the clothing as well, is that instead of like calculating the whole interaction with the mesh, they put these primitives on top of the bones, and when you do animation, these primitives also are animated, and physics or any interaction is calculated around them. So the first thing what I'm gonna do is the existing colliders, I'm gonna sort of like rotate them and move them so they follow the bones exactly. Luckily for me, some of them are okay in size, and some I'm gonna replace to spheres, not capsules. It's a little bit annoying to get used to Unreal Engine controls, especially if you are pro in some other software. Okay, so here is my result. So now these colliders pretty much follow the shape of the character. Now we can focus on our hats, right? So why I did focus on the bottom, because those leg colliders will be affecting the dress later. Now go to the hat. First of all, the head collider and head capsule I'm gonna do smaller and put to the bottom. And yeah, we need to make these guys in order. So pretty much the whole setup will be based around this. We need to add these capsules exactly how we have bones here in Blend, right? So my goal will be to do collider like this, like this, like this. And maybe for this one. Let's do that. But before we start, you might see that here in skeleton tree, we actually don't see all the bones. We only see one L and two R, which is strange. The Unreal works like that, but we're gonna go and find them and add colliders ourselves. So first, I'm gonna go scale the existing one a little bit because there will be more. And we're gonna go to the setting and select show all bones. Now, if we scroll to the bottom, we can see all the rest of the bones, and only two go got assigned collider automatically. What a pity. We're gonna select them all and go to add shape and add capsule, right? I think for this purpose, capsule represents this area better. Again, depending on what you do, you can choose spheres. I don't know, maybe that's chain or rope or anything else. Try with different shapes. They pretty much represent the collider, how they will interact with other part of the body. Okay, and now the most difficult part is to align them inside Unreal Engine. It's not really difficult, but that's quite annoying. I was really trying to find maybe easier way to create those capsules to follow the bones, but it doesn't seem there are some options. So we have to deal with these controls inside the Unreal Engine. So guys, enjoy the time lapse, me enjoying Unreal Engine transform controls. Again, if you are in the same situation like me, you can always refer to the Blender, how you name the bones, and try to put them in the same location. Okay, after the longest 10 minutes in my life, I got it set. Okay, so here what you see, collider is actually set like that to follow the bones. And of course, again, 3R is this and stuff, like you cannot put like 1R bone here and expect it to act normally. So they pretty much follow. Now we do have collider represent bones. We need to add constraints that represent joints. You can see those constraints as this red-green circle. They are added automatically to those two bones that were existed. Now we need to add them to the rest to our colliders, otherwise they will act disconnected. So how do you do that? You press on the collider and you can see the constraint added here. But on this bone, for example, there is no constraint. So we're gonna do right click, constraints, and here we're gonna choose the 1L because it's sort of parented to 1L bone, right? And here the constraint is created. We're gonna default the constraint to allow any rotation and stuff. So I'm gonna just make sure the green circle looks down like this. That will be the most default all side rotation. Long story short, this constraint tell what is the allowed twist and swing of the bone. Basically, green represents swing and red represents twist. Like you can see the one on the head bone, green represent that head can only move this way. That's why it's like a cone. And red represent this movement, right? If you're gonna do some physics like I do, you can actually use default settings because I will set some dampness that will return it to initial position. And I'm pretty okay with twist and swings. But in some cases, that can be very important. Like if you have a loose hand, right? You don't want the hand to go like and twist unnaturally. You will want to set it to move in some reasonable area. Or knee, right? Knee only bends in one side. You cannot bend your knee to the left or right. But what you need to know for sure is that without constraints at all, it's not gonna work because they also act like a joint, right? They connect one to another. So I'm gonna do exactly the same here, and also very important, the position of this constraint, right? It should be exactly where the bone joint is, or again, closer to that area. All right, and here we finally go, right? So I added colliders and constraints. My constraints are defaulted, but again, guys, depending on what you do, if you need more control over where this can go and it will be extremely loose, like again chain that is always like doing something, you might actually play around with the setting of the constraint and limit the movements and allow twist and swing. It's not that difficult, but will definitely take some time. Now I'm gonna go to setting and finally hide bones because I already figured out all the bones I need, and we're gonna select all bones except 2 and 3, then go to physics type and assign kinematic. Kinematic will mean that it will not be affected by physics, so only affected by our animations. The rest can be left default or specify that it will be simulated, but Unreal Engine will understand that anyway. Now we can actually preview that right away. We're gonna press these 2 arrows and press simulate. And yeah, so here you can see already that something is happening, but we do not have any settings, so it looks a bit shitty. Now the last part with our hat will be to actually set the settings. We can press on bones, on colliders, and here in details, we're gonna set mass. So it's pretty much the same behavior like in real life. I'm gonna go and set the root bones more heavier, like 3 kilogram. Then I go set it like to 2 kilogram and 1 kilogram, like that. And also for this sort of bones, I want them to quickly return in the original position. So Unreal Engine recommend the following settings. For linear damping, it recommends to set 20. 50, and for angular dumpling it could be 100, right? It's how fast it go back to initial position after it's affected. Although for the root bones, like these bones here, I might actually want to set it to 50 so they're more jiggly because there's like a root of the head. And one more thing, for all the constraint, we're gonna need to select them like this. We're gonna need to go to angular motor, and here angular drive mode we're gonna set to twist and swing and activate twist and swing. So this is actually what we allow in terms of movements, right? The slurp is just mathematical, can be used for some non-organic stuff, I guess. Twist allows twist along the axis and swing allow swing, and you can control them independently. Might be useful actually. And the strength, the lower the strength, the more it will be affected, the faster it will be returning into original position. There are more settings depending on what you're doing, and I really recommend to just ask GPT, like, I want this sort of effect, what settings should I try? Man, this is exactly how I was figuring it out. Here you can see for the root bones I was setting like 2500, for second bones it was 2000, and for the last bones it was 1.5. So that's done. Now we can actually go and test it out. Now if we go and hit the play, there will be nothing happening. This is because we need to do additional thing. We're gonna go to animation blueprints of our character in anim graph. And here we're gonna need to add rigid body, and let's connect main state to the nodes like this. Now press compile, and now if we go and try to hit play, we can actually see that something is happening, right? How cool is that? This is the whole thing. I'm gonna be honest, behind the scene, my settings gonna work only for this specific case. For tail, hair, and anything else, play around with the mass, with the strength, with the dumping factor and stuff. And that could be it, but we also have to do a clothing simulation. Okay, let's go back to physics assets and turn off preview animation. When that character was running, he was in preview animation, right? So let's click on this button, and we got in the clothing menu. How to get this clothing menu open? It's quite simple. We can actually maximize it from here. Click on activate clothing pass, and here you have this clothing. So you can actually pin it here to the screen, so it's always here with all the clothing data. So now we do have this clothing, etc. Back to it. Okay, so now let's maximize the bottom menu. And what we're gonna need to find is to find our clothing that we're gonna add to the clothing simulation. So since we have everything actually in parts, it will be very easy for us. We have this element tree. I'm gonna select the dress, and you can also preview it here by clicking isolate. Okay, I'm gonna select the dress, and we need to add it to physics. Gonna right click it and create clothing data from selection, and gonna name it 1 for convenience. But yeah, if you have more than one, definitely give it a reasonable name. Now we can actually press activate cloth painting, and here we are. Here we do have like a configuration, and we do have a clothing paint. We do have tool. We're gonna choose brush tool. Then we do have brush radius. We're gonna set it to 7, and there is also a paint value. The whole idea here is pretty much same to what we did with weights, but we're gonna add it here. So I don't recommend to start with 100 value. I gonna recommend to do 15 as a paint value and strength as 0.5. Okay, so my whole goal will be to start, and from the bottom I'm gonna add 15. When I do that, I'm gonna decrease value in 2 times 7, and to do the smooth transition like that. So here you can see I'm painting the line, keeping the most bottom, and I can do the exactly same thing once again, setting it to 3, making the radius smaller, and just add one more line around the dress. You can always get back to this step later, but this is what I figure out for dressing, right? So like how it is affected with the simulation. So it's more connected to original mesh from the top, and the bottom is more loose. That's pretty much it. That's the solid base. Now let's deactivate cloth painting. Gonna press this button. Now let's apply it. Let's right click and click this apply clothing data and choose the available asset. It's called like LOD01. Wait for it, and boom. Okay, the simulation is actually started. This is pretty much how easy it is to add, right? Just paint some area on the mesh, and we already have it. Now, here is the thing. Why these colliders are so important? Because the physics is calculated around them. So here's what happens if you gonna leave it as is, or they will be small enough, etc. Here I intentionally replaced them by sphere to show you the example. So of course, we're gonna need to do them as I showed in the video before, something like capsule. So I'm gonna recreate them back, and the better the colliders are, the more accurate physics will be. So they must represent the legs and be of nice size. The good thing is you can always go back to it and adjust if needed. Now, that's not the only thing that affects. There are of course plenty of settings. We can go back to clothing, and here we do have clothing config. There's a chaos cloth config and chaos cloth share it. We're gonna first go to the share it, and here there's a main bunch of settings, which is the quality of simulation. The thing here is simple. The more iterations, the more subdivision, the more detailed this simulation is, right? It's like how much it splits into the polygons. So you can see it's like more smooth, more nice. But that is again affecting the performance, so be careful with these settings. I will set it to 4 and 2. Now we can go to the other settings, which are most interesting. So there are plenty of settings, different modes and stuff. Let me give you some basic ones, and I also give you a tip how you can figure out whatever you need. So density is like a density of cloth. The lower the density, the more affected it is. But the higher the density, the more stiff it will be, right? Like a rubber, right? Always going back. And you can play it with the settings here. Another very important setting is in collision properties, use self-collision. So the clothes are not going through itself. Definitely better to enable, right? Otherwise, it can go through itself when the movement will happen, right? Collision thickness is like how much the collider is affected. Another setting like dumping coefficient or local dumping might affect like how actually actively the cloth is deformating and how fast it go back to initial position again, depending of what you're creating. But I understand that the amount of these settings might be overwhelming. So there are two ways to figure out what the settings do. It will be quite long video if I'm gonna explain all of them, but trust me, it's not about knowing all of them. It's just about knowing the settings that you need for your clothes. So how do you figure it out? In Unreal Engine, there are samples, and there I really recommend you to go and install the content examples, right? Now, if you go to this content examples, we're gonna go in 5.5 version. It is also available in other. Now we're gonna go to physics, and here we have physics load. We're gonna open that level, and we can actually play it. So here's what's happening here. You can go and check different type of garments, and yes, you can see what settings Unreal Engine recommends to achieve that or that effect. So you can silk, rubber, heavy leather, right? Everything is here, explains with a whole bunch of settings. Also, they explain this self-collision, so you can see what is actually self-collision, when it's important, when it's not. And you can see the preview on the character. But what is most importantly is that you can go and click on any cloth, go into the asset setting, and you can click on any piece of garment that catches your attention and you want something like that. Go to the clothing, find these cloth settings, and just see the settings that they are using. And that will be helpful. This is exactly how I figured it out, because there are a bunch of settings, like most of them you will not need at all. Another setting that if you feel that the resolution like is not enough, you have like white artifacts. You can also try this mesh skinning and enable this use multiple influence. Add additional smoothing. You can keep it like 100 and enable this another setting, smooth transition. That must help. And here you can see while I was testing, I can see that in the connection to the main mesh, the transition is quite heavy. So I decided to actually go back to painting and add one more circle with very low value like that to make it more smooth. And here you can see the final settings. But again, this is all about experiments and checking some examples that work for you. All right, we are ready. Let's give it a try. So here's my final result. We do have Jiggly physics on the hat. We do have clothes simulated on the dress. And the character looks so much lively now. And the same exact way I was doing the characters in my other videos. That's just a last pass, adding some bones to the tails, to other parts, and playing around. Again, it can be some rigid stuff. It can be some organic stuff. It can be some straps. Many cool things can be be done by that. But make sure you follow the initial steps to make this process easier, such as separating parts, such as having like optimized mesh, and then you'll have everything set. Having like low poly nice mesh will definitely help it out. Doing this on high poly mesh with millions of polygons probably gonna just crash the Unreal Engine. So be careful about that. That was a big difficult video for me, guys. I hope you enjoyed and learned something new. Hit that like and subscribe button, and I see you in the next videos.